all, I just want to say ditto to everything that was said earlier. I feel like, you know, a couple of the things that came up were, you know, how do we attract board members? I heard you all saying, how do we keep them once we get them? And how do we get rid of them when they're not so great anymore, right? And what came up was like being courageous, right? The courage can be in having the discussion with someone that, you know, your 30 years of service have been miraculous and life-saving to our organization. How may we envision the future? And maybe in a different way than we've seen it in the past, so that the organization can benefit. Because at the end of the day, we're all here for the organization, right? Sometimes that courage comes when we start thinking about the nuts and bolts of how to make what was talked about earlier actually happen. So, you know, term limits came up, succession planning came up, diversity came up. And so what I'm hoping to do with my presentation is just fill in a little bit more of the nuts and bolts and how we can achieve some of the things that we've already discussed. That's me. Okay, so building a great board. So CEN offers workshops and boot camps and all these different things. This is typically a 3-hour discussion that I have with folks. These are some of the topics that we would typically cover. However, today, based on what's happening here in the room, we're going to focus on how to build that ideal board and keep them engaged and keep them excited and keep them for the right amount of time, right? And then we're also going to talk about everyone's absolute favorite topic. Let me hear it. Yes, diversity. You're correct. So we will talk a little bit about those things and how, you know, the nuts and bolts work. So, we did the introduction, and I feel like we kind of covered that. You know, what challenges have you faced? But really quickly, and I mean, like in a word, maybe 5 before I point the laser at you. What are some of the things that we find challenging when we are, you know, in board building mode? Yes.
So, in wanting to build a more diverse board for us, that includes age diversity. And what we're finding is that younger folks, Gen Z, millennials, they don't recognize board experience as valuable. They see boards as somewhat antiquated institutions, and they don't get it. And so they don't understand the value that their perspective could bring to actual board service.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I think also in seeking board diversity, it's dislodging current board members to think of recruiting people who are not our age, you know, because I'm pretty much the age of the board, you know, and so how do you go beyond that?
Yes. Anything else?
I would like to say, I think a lot of the older board members are insecure in board, and every now and then you get an annual meeting to Vegas, or you know you're invited at really cool functions. So that's just their life. That's their social life. So they don't want to give up something that might be the only thing that they have. And you can't teach an old dog, new tricks. But they ain't into the new gig anymore. It's like, okay, well, we've been there, done that. You guys take over. We'll take a pat on our back. We want to be on the left-hand column of the board of directors, so we get a rah, rah, rah.
Yes.
But some people just aren't happy. And when they could be at a free conference, free meetings, clap, 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 because they're on the board, they just don't want to leave that sense of security. That might be the only thing that they got going for them, not to offend
Thank you for
anybody.
that. No, thank you for that. I mean, I think that's very real, and I can see it with an old aging population, but I can see it with a lot of people. Folks identify with the mission, and they feel important, and sometimes that can get conflated, right? Where we start to identify with the work, right? So, I want to talk with you about the board building cycle, and I think it will really touch on these different topics that came up. You know, whether we're valuing board service, dislodging the folks, taking it out, prying it out of their fingers so we can invite other people in. So the 9 steps, are the first is identify. What are we doing out in the community to identify who could be set and ready for service? sometimes, you know, if you have, it's very common, we'll get to the nuts and bolts later of who is serving on boards, but it's retired people, right? They have the luxury of time, sometimes they even have the luxury of money to offer, and that creates sort of an interesting dynamic between the organization and the board members. How can we open up who it is that we're looking to attract? And once we open that up, how are we cultivating them? Are we going to the places where they are? Are we making ourselves kind of sexy so that once they, you know, once we catch their eye, they want to know more? So they're swiping the right way, right? So, you know, we really need to make sure that we are in the mindset of growth and change and, like was said earlier, opportunity. What are we doing to recruit? I want someone here, please tell me, what is the primary way a new name comes before your board? Or if you've had a new board member recently, somebody said they had a handful of new ones. How did they get there? How were they recruited?
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth. Is that fair?
I actively, and my board chair actually actively goes out to all of the business meetings, all of the meetings that are happening, and he's on the board of the NAACP, he's on the board of he was on the board of the libraries for years, so he knows everybody, so he's actively looking for people, and he'll come to me and ask me, what kind of people do we need on the board? Do we need somebody who's an attorney, because we didn't have one of those for a while, somebody in HR, somebody who works at the bank for finance, those
So you're
kinds of
meeting
things.
people where they are, and you're in the circles of movers and shakers. I like it. What do we have in the back?
You know, I'm gonna give away some ACM secrets here.
We won't tell you.
We have a longish informal list of folks that exhibit leadership characteristics, interest in growing the field, and other types of skill sets that they want to grow. And then, even though we have an elected body, we also have an appointed body, and part of the thing is building desire for people to become leaders. So we start a series of strategic conversations with folks to get them involved, to build involvement and engagement, as opposed to, doing the blind thing. Right. So I mean, it's a long list, right? And you don't get everybody, but you continuously have the conversations about what would it be like for you? What would spark your imagination and interest? That sort of thing.
I love it. And I feel like this is something when we were sitting together at lunch, we talked about, your first position as ED, you mentioned, which also made me think about women in politics. They talk about how many times women have to be asked before they will consider saying a yes. I think a board serve is much the same way. And when I think about your comment about young people not valuing, I think sometimes we don't value them. And we're not doing the asking. We're not going to where they are. We're not getting all pretty when we get there and making them want to know more about us and showing the skills that we can provide for them, so that not only are they investing into our communities, our organizations, we have something to offer them as well. And so we have to start changing our worldview around the industry and what we're coming to the table with. I love that you're getting out in these places where the people are that you want to attract. I love the idea of having a longish informal list. I also wonder, if your list starts getting longish, how can you engage those people before you make the ask for them to join your board? Right? Anybody here have committees?
Yeah.
Are you asking people to start, come out and see a program, come out and start on our programming committee, come out and do X, Y, and Z? I saw a hand.
What I've done with my board, I look towards the members and their skill sets and who they are and how active they are in the community. And since I'm on a high school campus, I've got more than enough kids to pick and choose from. However, I'm right now in the process of recruiting one of the younger teachers because they're in tune with the kids. He just graduated from the school 2.5 years ago, and he's already got his degree, so he's sub-teaching. And that way we can tune in to see what's really going on with them. And then we have a lot of interns that come back in for our youth committee, which, you know, we have to stay open. We do have a few members that, you know, can't use a computer. I have a concern about that. But, you know, they are good at going out in public appearances and marketing. But the main goal is to, what can you bring to the table?
So you are allowing people to shine, right? You're giving them an opportunity to be leaders, you're giving them an opportunity to show up for the organization, and, you know, that's a form of succession planning. You make sure that the next generation is excited, fired up, has a place, has a voice, and knows that they can come to you, they will. And then when it's time for you to roll off in your position, you can feel like you're leaving it in good hands. What are we doing in terms of orientation? Who here has ever served on a board and you got there and they were like, welcome?
Yeah.
Right? And you spend the next 6, 9 months, a year trying to, what is this? What are we doing? Do you all have procedures in place? Do you all have a packet? Do you give them the packet? Is it available online?
We Dropbox it to them.
The Dropbox, okay, because you know younger folks,
Yeah.
right? And even if you have done those things, is there somebody going through with them what it all means? I appreciate the honesty because you're already ahead of the game. A lot of people don't even have a packet. But how can we push the envelope and go a little bit farther? If I'm feeling well oriented and I know what I'm doing, I'll keep coming. I'll feel purposeful.
We have them sign. We have all of the expectations and how long the terms are, all the information, and then we both sign it. So we have a one-on-one, which has been really helpful.
I love it. So how are we involving folks? I'm going to kind of go through this. I have 5 million slides, but I'm going to go really quickly. Involvement, basically, you know, everybody's looking for that lawyer. Everybody's looking for that accountant because nobody likes to do numbers. Nobody wants to think about the risk, right? And they're like, oh, thank God we got a lawyer. Do it all. Ooh. But in the end of the day, sometimes the lawyer really likes to paint or make, you know, create content. We all need to assume that their involvement is going to be in line with their day jobs, right? So we have to make sure that we're involving people in the way that they need and want to be involved and what's best for the order. Suzanne mentioned opportunities to educate them, and again, that's related to the value that we bring, that they can walk away with, you know, being a better person than they were when they got there. But also, we're going to educate them about things relevant to what we need them to do, right? So it makes the organization better. Are we all conducting evaluations of our board members? Raise your hands high. Never mind. That's okay. Today is a new day, right? How often should we be evaluating board members? I know you know. That's it. Throw it out there.
Once a year?
Once a year. Nailed it. Yeah, once a year is great. And the thing is, you know, it was brought up, is there a partnership between the ED and the board? So often, boards feel like they're there to lord over the ED and make sure keep them in line, right? But we do a great job of evaluating our EDs, but what about ourselves? What are we doing to monitor our individual performance and our performance as a body? And if the answer is nothing, today's a new day. When you go back, start thinking about how you can do that. Lastly, make sure that you're rotating. Keep it fresh. So even if you're not quite ready to go to 2-year term limits or something, I do recommend term limits. Is this on? Even if you're not ready to go from nothing to 2 years, make sure that they're rotating into different positions and points of responsibility. That way, it's a more broad, shared load of responsibility, and you don't have somebody that gets too settled and they're like, your job is on the line, lady. If you have your own learning curve, I'm not gonna be worried about what you're doing. I'm trying to stay afloat with what I'm doing because I want to do my best for the organization. All right, so these are just some great tips. Like I mentioned, this is a 3 to 4 hour presentation. There's so much more that could be part of this, but those are the basics. And the last one that we often forget, like I almost forgot to say it right now, is to celebrate. When we're on board, so often we get bogged down in the negativity or even the positivity. We're doing such a great job, we raised all the money, but guess what? It's time to raise it up. We finished the event, let's plan the next one. Don't forget to say thank you, don't forget to celebrate the victory. There are some of these, please grab one before you leave, or if you want to come up with them now. There's a board matrix. Who here knows what a board matrix is? Fabulous. Quickly, it's essentially a document that's going to show you, hey, you know, diversity. We would like some of that, but we don't know where to start. This is a nuts and bolts kind of a document that says, all right, we need people of a certain age bracket. Because so far, our current members, Johnny, Josie, Jimmy, and Jane, they're all between the ages of 51 and 65, but we're trying to lure people who are between 20 and 40. So it's going to help you know, okay, so prospective members, Susie, Sandy, Sadie, whoever else, they're going to fit those categories. They're between the age range that we want. We're going to look at socioeconomics, race, ethnicity, ability, resources. Some of those are financial. I could argue some of those are time as well. You've heard time, talent, and treasure, right? You know, all of these different ways you can look at our board members and figure out how are we doing? Do we have all the things that we need to make that symphony that we talked about before? If you're all tubas, right? So, one thing I would encourage you to do, you have this document, make a copy, fill it out yourself with who you think is on your board, but don't let that be enough. Why do I say that? If I am looking at you and I'm like, white man, certain age, do I know your full story? Absolutely not. You might have a rich heritage of whatever that I have no idea about. It maybe doesn't show in your personal appearance. So I think it's a really interesting exercise to write down what you think you see, and then to also have people write down what they are. I have a fun story about when I was in ED. We were a startup. We were not tracking data about the demographics of the people that we served. And we were going out for our first big grant, and they were asking those questions. And I had a board member look me completely dead in the face, and he was like, oh yeah, you can look at them and tell. And I thought, can you? No, you can't. I can't, can you? And he says, no, just fill it out. And I said, no, I'm not willing to do that. And he said, well, I mean, you can look, you can just tell. And I said, so I just brown, white, and black, everybody, like, I don't even know what that means, right? And, but it's just amazing how for some people it's not even in their purview. That folks have an identity and we should honor it. And then you may be surprised at the level of diversity that exists on your board that you have no idea about. It might breathe a little bit easier, and it might make inviting that next person that fits outside of what you thought you had a little bit simpler. Because you'll see, oh, I didn't even know that person had a disability. They never disclosed that before. But the next person, maybe that could be your board buddy. Right? So, where do you find them? We talked about being out in the community super briefly. A couple of the resources that are out there, there are board matches through the Volunteer Center. Thrive Alliance for Nonprofits does some of that. We partner with the Hispanic Foundation to help them provide candidates for board service who are ready. They have a months-long cohort experience. So when they show up, if you are fortunate enough to get one of these folks on your board, and see Ian just got two, when they come in, they will have a bio for you. They will have a list of questions for you. So how often are you meeting? How often are your evaluations? So these are my skill sets. How do you foresee using what I bring to the table? If as an org you're not prepared for that, you may not be the one that a really good candidate selects, right? So it's really helpful to look for people who are ready, and there's some resources out there. How many of you use LinkedIn? Yeah. How many of you feel like you've had success? Okay. All right. So there are some opportunities for training through LinkedIn to know a little bit better how to use it, so you're not just shooting out in the dark. Oh, you'd be surprised how many folks don't even know that they have a nonprofit side, LinkedIn for nonprofits, and the ability to search for folks just online that way. You're welcome. Here you go. So we're going to transition now, talking about diversity, like through the board matrix exercise. And basically, every couple of years, Board Source does something called Leading with Intent. They do a national survey of nonprofits, and they aggregate the data, and they prepare a report. And what we have found is that for boards, the board chairs as well as CEO positions, this is how it breaks down with regard to gender. So 28% of the CEOs are male, 72% are female, and then we have the wonderful category called other. How do we feel about that category? Any thoughts? Let it rip. I'm feeling hot just thinking about it.
I know, right? Well, there's a whole, I think, conversation about gender identity and pronouns that could inform this survey.
Such a kind way of putting that. But yes, we have literally othered them, right? Like, literally. But I appreciate the fact that they've recognized there is something beyond the binary, right? And we, step by step, right? But we're not so well represented in any of those categories if we're falling into the other, right? Board membership, males are 52% of the membership, females are 48%. With regard to age, CEOs are right at 13%, 65 and older, right? How about if we look at the really young groups? Under 40 is only 11%. So this 56 to 64, they are winning right now in terms of being CEOs. With regard to chair and board member, that's your demographic as it is. And if you all are feeling like it's a challenge, you've got 2 more age groups to work within. They don't have to all be out of kindergarten, right? Yeah. No, please. Did you want to ask one?
Yeah, quick question that might be on your brains too. So when I was talking with Jim, my Netflix person, last Friday, he goes, I work about 60 hours a week. I can't come to any committee meetings, and I think about ALF at 7:30 on a Saturday morning and on Sunday night, and I can't participate. And that's real. And so I'm looking at this demographic going, that is exactly the problem I have. And so I said, do you want me to start crowdsourcing committees? He goes, yes. So tell me, how do we include these people?
Yes. So some of the things that we've seen, how many of you are allowing folks to meet remotely? Great one. When they're meeting remotely, is it by phone or is it by video conference?
My phone.
Phone.
Video.
I have one board that does phone, and I have one board that just wants to do video.
Mm.
You have one,
I have 2 boards I work with. One wants to do phone, one loves video.
okay?
Which do you think is younger?
I'm gonna go with video.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all know if people want to turn up for your organization and be a part of it, if you can see them face to face, how much more valuable is that? How many times have you been? I'm a lawyer. I have to do continuing education for 2 states. Right. So when I get to do it, it's like I can find a reason. Oh, it's a good time to start like dusting my shelves and things that just don't make any sense when I should be focused on what I need to do. If I have that visual connection with folks, it's hugely important. Hugely on both ends, right? The other thing is, what days and times are we meeting? You know, I served in an organization where the board meetings were at noon on a weekday. In the Bay Area, you know, like people commute 2 hours away, right? So you really have to think about, are we putting needless, I would say, roadblocks in front of people? Can there be a measure of flexibility? If most of the people we're working with are in this, are in this age group here, or this one, what do we know about a bunch of those folks?
They're retired.
Everywhere to be. Just kidding. No, they're retired. So they can be more flexible sometimes, right? I say that jealously, by the way, not mocking them. But you know, they might be more flexible, and you might have to massage them into realizing that's what they need to be. Yeah. Did that answer?
Yeah.
And there are a million other ways that we can be inclusive, but that's a start. So when we look at like ethnic makeup, race makeup, what stands out?
Boards are white.
Hashtag we're white. Yeah. 84% of our boards are comprised of white people, although white people make up doing all right, I guess. I mean, they're only one, right, okay, I guess. I mean, they're only 1% of our population by census data, but at least they're represented in nonprofit. So, you know, we have to start really having these conversations and questions. A lot of times diversity can be difficult because people feel like, I don't want to tokenize people, or I don't want to make everything about race. But we've kind of already done that, have we not? By not talking about it, here's what we get.
Well, it could also be that the lower numbers are those that work 2 or 3 jobs. You know, they don't have the financial freedom, or they don't have the time. They didn't inherit money when they popped out. So that might not be a fair statement, I don't think, just because, you know, in the Hawaiian population, for example, for a lot of the minority population, if you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, you need to be you can't play football, you can't be a cheerleader, you can't play basketball.
You're a participant
You
in your
can't
household
do what
economy.
we did as kids, because once you become of that working class, you then help out your parents who's already working 2 or 3 jobs.
Absolutely.
So this statement is clear across the board with most of the things that are going on right now, not just boards of directors. It's just because of the fact that the younger people now are, you know, working to survive. So I don't believe that you can raise numbers for
Willy-nilly.
voluntary
Right.
positions to waste 2 or 3 times,
No,
I mean, hours.
Here's what I'd like to offer to that, and I really appreciate that comment, because I 100% concur with what you're saying. However, if we are concerned about diversifying and being representative of who we are as a nation and as an industry and in our communities, we have a duty. And if we're not even asking them, that's a problem. Because people give their time, talent, and treasure as they please, where they please, and they will give it. I'm a Black woman, I'm from the South. My sister and I talk about this frequently, how Black folks are kind of considered new in the philanthropy game. We're not. Where do Black people give? Is someone else who might help me out?
Sure.
Where do Black people give? Church. Where do we serve with our time? Church. Right? But we were never on the radar in that way. That our philanthropy looked different, so it wasn't considered. So I feel like I hear you, but if it's something important to me, I will make the time. I will find the time. I will find a way to work in the field, so I will be there. I work in that field, so I can show up and volunteer, and I'll find a way.
I look at these numbers too, and I agree with Dickie. You know, it will also vary regionally and based upon what's happening in the economy. But I also think about the circle of professional associations that drives life in the nonprofit economy. And that's part of that problem, is that if your circle of associates looks like you, and you do not challenge yourself to have the personal networks that reflect the communities that we are part of, I kind of feel like you're part of the problem.
Not kind of.
Okay, I feel that way too. But anyway, but you know, I was trying to do a little Midwesternism there. But you know what I'm saying. So I think, and then the question is how much personal responsibility you have for the professional colleagues that you would deem to be your equals, right? Who are your equals, and do you actually see yourself as a part of society or above it? And this is, I think that's part of the problem that we've got there.
And I think it is related, Sticky, to what you're saying. If we don't ask the question, we are making the decision for those folks.
But
Don't say
going-
no for something.
And going back just a tad, when we're trying to identify who the board of directors are or who we would want, the only way you're gonna have a reputation of being a go-getter or being somebody that's raised money or proven yourself is because you have the financial means. Because somebody that's working 2 or 3 jobs or is a mother of 5 can't get out in the community to gain that reputation to be considered to be a volunteer on a board.
I'm gonna offer some pushback. Apparently that's what I do to you, Dickie. So,
Apparently what?
I said apparently that's what I do to you. I don't know why.
You're an attorney.
Touché. All right, so at CEN, we are big proponents of expanding your board and service on your board to mean more than just financial consideration. I'm a big believer in the give and get, not give or get. But I also feel like we need to make space on these boards for people who are recipients of the service, are leaders in the community who may not have deep pockets, are young people who may not be able to even drive, right? And by doing that, we have to have boards who say, yeah, all right, we have a $2,000 give and get for our board, but because you're a person who is a recipient of our service, we're gonna waive that. You know why? Because we value the perspective that you bring on the board that is like nobody else that sits up here. And what you bring is gonna help us deliver a product that is better and more honed in on what we need to follow through on our mission.
I've got a story that I have to share that's really in line with what Mike said, which is there's a woman on my board. She works in M&A, mergers acquisition. She is like in deep with tech companies in Silicon Valley. African American woman. She is total ass kicker, right? I just love this woman. She's another one that's got energy and I'm like, right? I mean, she's just. So she was hired to go to Cisco and build a team, right? So she went to build a team. She got all the pieces together. She said, oh my God, this is fantastic. And she looked, and it was all white men. And so the point being here, and she's given this speech and talked about this experience at like, Berkshire Hathaway conferences with all white guys as an African American woman saying, I did it. I did that because that's who I know. That's who's in my network. And so I think as individuals on a board and as executive directors, think outside the box, get outside of your comfort zone. I am a member of Rotary, love Rotary. However, if I'm looking for people under 40, I'm not gonna find them in Rotary. So, and they're not gonna come to a meeting at 4 o'clock on a Thursday
Or
for 3
7
hours.
a.m. is what it is
Yeah,
now.
yeah, not gonna happen. So again, that whole needs assessment of like, what do I need to get to where I need to go? I gotta be flexible. I'm really seriously talking about blowing up the committee structure, but I'm continuing to iterate on that.
Burn it down.
So what you've identified is part of the challenge in the legacy and restrictions of what board process and modality is. That, for example, if I'm choosing to diversify and I want to attract a business member, they're not going to want to meet when a community member or someone who has to work and can't get off work. How do you create structures and processes that accommodate the diversity which our rigid social structure does not support?
My thought, and please feel free to weigh in as well, is that the right board member for you?
It is the right board member.
Is
But
it
their
the-
life cycle doesn't give us the opportunity to take advantage of it when it requires a quorum, a Robert's Rules of Order, parliamentarian procedure, right?
I guess for me, I see it differently. I feel like if we as a body are saying that in order for us to be our best and most effective selves, feel that it's important that we get more people of color, get more people of color, younger people, single parents, if that's who we serve, whatever it is. And we have a prospect that says, I don't wanna meet after work. I don't wanna, okay, well, thank you for your honesty and candor. Maybe I can find a different way for you to serve.
Yep.
They may not be for you.
Advisory council, they don't have to meet, they can contribute, you can have a special event for them once a year. I mean, I kept a lot of our institutional board members close. I didn't want them to stay on the board, nor did they want to stay on the board. Way too busy, too much to do, right? But I didn't want to lose them. So I keep it in close with a little reception, some love. I do a one-on-one phone call with them once a year, whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm not really focused on the people who really aren't prepared to or engaging in a way that would be unproductive, which is what your latter one really identified, right? I'm saying it's there, but there are barriers that I don't have control over. And so what I'm asking is what are the newer processes that allow us to engage them? Where you've identified, you have to stick with the current set of processes because a parliamentary procedure or whatever requires that. And so,
Okay, it sounds to me like you're saying, we have to have a quorum, yes. But do we have to meet at 7 a.m.? Robert's Rules of Order is not telling you that. Your bylaws probably are.
that's not, yeah, but that is not what I'm dictating
help me
as part
out.
of the
Help me
circumstance,
out.
but,
But, I mean, is it close to?
yeah.
How often do you meet? Can you meet less?
There we go.
Yeah, so, I mean, even meeting less is still part of you still have the structural challenge. I'll relate to it to the Alliance for Community Media. There is no longer a region in the mid-Atlantic because people don't want to be bothered with bylaws, formal structure, processes, motions, et cetera. And yet there's still a need for governance and some conceptual implementation that's gives a sense of of potential for an organizational structure. And everybody falls back to, oh, well, you know what? You got to form bylaws, and it goes back to that same method. So I'm saying, like, I wonder if we're really pushing ourselves to try and figure out how to break that structure to solve this problem.
I think we need to innovate.
I'm sorry, what?
I think we need to innovate. I think we need to innovate, and that means having courageous conversations about what it means to serve on a board. Autumn, when you said, young people don't see the value, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't know if I want to sit and hang out with a bunch of people 20 years older than me that are doing things the way they've done for 40 years.
Yeah,
Not
it's really
inspiring.
boring. It's really horrible.
Not frickin'
And then they
sometimes
want to meet
toxic.
at like 7 p.m. on a Friday night.
Oh.
And I'm a single parent, and I'm
No,
like,
no, I am out.
I was never in.
No. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess my answer to that, Richard, is yeah, we've always done it this way, and there's Robert's Rules of Order,
And
and
some
there's
people are dropping things like that, by the way.
Yes,
We have-
right? I mean, I think about, this is a little off topic here, but I mean, I think about the way companies here are dealing with hiring, I happened to be in this meeting with like FANG, Facebook, Apple, Google, blah, 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 right? Not requiring college degrees anymore. Doing apprenticeship training for people 35 and over to get them right into jobs. I mean, wow, let's think outside the box, shall we? So how do we actually pull people in that we need? Let's have the system work for us, not us having to work to match a rule in a rule book.
This is really good to hear, because I can take back at least one piece of confirmation. We're looking at our bylaws, and in large part, we're looking at them to see if we can change how often the board is required to meet, what a board term looks like, can we implement a youth, like a high school board term that is separate? So we're looking at all those things.
High school or committees, like,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what this kind of made me start thinking about is maybe having the board members be different chairs of committees, and then maybe some of those people who can't meet at those specific times for the board meeting, you put them on that committee, and that's all they have to do. You just, as long as you're there for the committee, because that's the thing that we've kind of come up against is all of the people who will sign up for committees and then not show up to the committee, and so between meetings nothing happens.
It's a waste of time for
Yeah.
everybody.
And the thing is, I've come in contact with organizations that require, if you want to serve on our board, you have to be on a committee for at least a year. And then you start getting that cultural indoctrination, isn't that an awful word? But you get that cultural exposure to how we do things here. And if you're with it, you're with it. And if I'm asking you to make that next leap and kind of inconvenience yourself or kind of restructure how you thought of board service or how we did it in the past, if you're on board and you believe in it, you'll say, okay, I'm gonna go here and then I'll.
That's a question. Two things. I've had a problem. Our city council meetings are on the second Thursday of beginning of the month and the end. Last year, people wouldn't show up because they were at the city council meeting. I have gone down to the city council meeting. Why aren't you at the meeting? I hate seeing you come. And yeah, busted.
Is that the right way to meet then?
Yeah, so what I've done is like, well, maybe Thursday's not working for those who, insist on being there.
You want to be active in the community.
So I've changed it twice. And the dean of the college, she can't come because she pretty much babysits on Wednesday night the students. I'm like, okay, we can't have, the only thing that's left is Friday and Saturday, and I'm not doing either one of them personally. I just won't. But what I have done is like, if we need to vote on something and everyone's not there, and we don't have a quorum, it's pretty much a meeting at that point. But we will put those points of, on the agenda, what it is, and what I've done, pick up the phone and call the members that weren't there. And we're gonna take a vote, we'll email a vote. That way we can get it done, because it seems like that works sometimes.
That's a wonderful example of innovation. And I want to add, this is where your term limits come into play. I've had countless people talk to me. I've experienced where you serve on a board, there is no term limit, and you feel like you're on an endless highway. I don't like to run, but if I were to run a marathon, I would want to know it was a marathon and not a 5K, right? So I know when to burn and when to expect to hit a wall, and then to feel like, can I push through the wall? Well, not if it goes on the rest of my life, right? So that's one of the beauties of term limits, where you can say, 2 years is your term, give it all you got, leave it all out on the floor. Cancel those city council meetings. Know that for 2 years I'm asking you to send your significant other, right? But after that, you will get back to your normal life. We're not gonna say goodbye, it'll just be so long, or we're gonna repurpose you on this committee, or on this advisory, or on this whatever. We're not trying to lose you, but when you're there, we want you to show up.
You know, the other thing that you said too, Shana, I just want to underscore is the whole holding people accountable.
Yes.
How many committee meetings have I been to where, oh, so-and-so's not here, well, we're gonna start 15 minutes. I don't have time for that crap. No, you know? And so I think your chairperson and your committee heads, however that looks, I mean, having a real honest and transparent conversation about that. And if it's not working, don't do it. You know, I mean, literally, John, who's this guy on my board, who said, I can't pretend, it was a real eye-opener for me. It's like, of course you can. And I know, you know, but yet I'm missing all the goodness he offers. So I need to change something. I want to accommodate that board member somehow and figure it out. And I'm really toying with the idea of some sort of crowdsourcing Google Doc kind of, almost like a bulletin board for my board around who's doing what and working on what and how I need. How do we make that happen between face-to-face meetings that we only have once a quarter? So I want to get innovative about it. I think we have to if we want that involvement.
I just threw out there, it'd be really cool if both your organizations got together and figure out what's the new model that requires to solve this problem. Go get them.
See you next year. Got it. Okay, so we're gonna go here and there and move on.
What has your experience been in rewriting your bylaws, and where you began and who?
I think this is one of those great times where it shouldn't all be on one person, whether it's your board chair or your ED. It's a cultural tectonic shift. So you need to have buy-in, and you need to make it a process that people can weigh in on. And I think even if you don't give folks like your staff like veto power or whatever, get some input from them. They might see things in a way that's like, oh, we didn't think about programming's on that night. We shouldn't, right? That's my take on it.
Yeah. I would say, and it's always that task of, I mean, for me, not my jam. Hate doing that, right? I'm not one to volunteer when I'm on a board, but I think, you know, one technique would be just calendaring that. Like every year, this is an interesting technique actually. I was on a board once where the CFO of the organization had an agenda item every month for the finance committee. So it wasn't just let's look at the P&L and see how much money we have to raise. It was actually like, we're gonna do an insurance update for 20 minutes. This month we're gonna do an HR update for a while and just let you guys know what's happening. This month we're gonna talk about whatever. And I kind of feel like bylaws is just something that we gotta read them once a year. Let's make sure this is still working for us and relevant. And then, yeah, it's fallen under the sort of control or responsibility of nominating and governance. And I've got on my national board, I found a guy. Oh, thank God! I was like, help me, right?
Everybody needs a guy.
Everybody needs a guy. And he goes, I'll do that. And I'm like, fantastic. I want you to like know these things inside and out. I'm not going to remember if we can do email votes or not. I'm not going to retain that, right? So I think somebody who has a passion and maybe doesn't have quite, or maybe doesn't yet, maybe doesn't quite have a way to fit in. Like, can you just own this document, make sure we're compliant, be responsible for making sure we're reading it every year.
So
And
that
another
relies
thing
on
that you
a
can-
board chair or someone of that nature, is that what you're saying?
I've done nominating or governance chair before, but it depends on your board, their structure and how big it is and stuff, but yeah.
And there may be somebody on your board that has the expertise that you need.
Right.
I mean, it may be the attorney who, for a time, wanted to come in for a
I
different
know
reason.
it's jumping forward.
Yeah.
That's
So
the
I
new
did-
person there.
I did for my
There you go.
organization, I
That we
took it
got.
on. We needed to do a bylaws evaluation change, nobody had looked at it, nobody was really meeting the way that they should be meeting for the organization, and we went through it over the course of a year and made the bylaws changes that we needed to, and it just may need to be the CEO or ED that takes on the initiative. But we are fortunate that we actually have an attorney that's provided to us pro bono.
Right.
So that's really helpful to us, and I certainly recommend that if you can get that kind of relationship going, that's fantastic.
And it was mentioned, when you get that new board member, that should be one of the skill sets you look for.
Yeah.
And you
Because
make
that's what
that-
happened.
you make
He's
that
the newest
clear.
board member that we got. He's an attorney. His son was an intern, and that's why he wants to serve on the board. So he's committed to it. And he came in, and I showed him the bylaws, and he said, "Yeah, there's a couple of things in here. When did you last do them?" And he said, "I see that your bylaws were last updated 5 years ago. It's about time you renew them." And so he's going to make a presentation at the next board meeting about the bylaws and what may need to be changed and make recommendations. That's such a load
Just be very
off.
clear about that in the recruitment phase, right? And let them know the expectation there. Really quickly, Vicki, did you have a question?
I'll be very quick. I'll just make a quick comment.
Thank you.
I've chaired many a board, and in 76 and 77, post-Hurricane Iniki, I was the fundraising chair for the Kauai United Way. That's when I came up with the 3-strike rule, i.e. the names on the left-hand column that just wanted to be there. If you don't show up for 3 meetings, no discussion, you're out. People got pissed off at me, but wanted to bring in new, fresh blood. And I've also sat on boards that they do squat. Like when you try to ask them to do a silent auction item, buy a table, what have you, they might get 1 ticket and they're asking if the establishment is buying their ticket because they don't contribute. It's clear that this discussion is not hard, but unfair for me to sit in only because of the fact that Jet and I are from Kauai. So when I thought about our board members, albeit 8 or 9, when we call a meeting once a month, at least 5 can walk to the meeting. Whereas Jet and I will drive 5 or 6 minutes to get to the meeting, and it's usually well attended only because it's not the inconvenience like you folks, like I'm not driving at 4 in the afternoon, or I'm not bucking the traffic at 7 in the morning, like what you guys deal with. So it's a little bit unfair in this conversation because I don't think we have that problem of retaining and getting reputable talent to want to sit on the board. And it's a small community, that it's a giving community that most people through relationships can ask. So it's maybe a little bit unfair for us to sit here and just kind of like cruise, because I don't really believe we have that problem, but Jet's the president, you
And
know.
I'm sure you have other challenges that are unique to
Yeah.
the islands as well.
Yes, the problem real quickly is that because island's so small, everybody's asking the same people for the same thing year round.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like there's still pearls of wisdom you can take from this room that you can apply to those things that are specific to you all. And I think what we talked about earlier on, we're going outside of your comfort zone, going to the places, taking an assessment of what it is that you need and being where they are to find them, it's gonna apply.
And politically, who else do you need on your board? I mean, one of the things that we had to shape was, wow, we're getting a lot of county contracts now for training and facilitating difficult conversations. I need a public sector person on my board. Let me go after that person. One of the values of ALF is we don't create choirs. We put people in the room who vehemently disagree with each other on policy or on politics. And so you're gonna laugh, but I looked at my board and I said, we don't have any Republicans, we don't have any conservative leaning people. So we're gonna go find some and bring them onto our board. Yeah, we have to walk the talk for that. And guess what? We're all learning something, including me. So you know what I mean? That's the beauty of diversity of thought and sector.
The one thing that I would add to that, you have to be very careful to not tokenize the people that you bring on.
Yeah.
So even if we're
Yes.
not talking race, age, religion, whatever it is,
That's right.
if it's viewpoints,
That's right.
if you bring that one person and say they're all the way to the right, are they going to be welcome? Are they going to feel like they belong there and that they have a voice? Are people making comments that are insulting their intelligence, kind of ha ha ha, high five, that was funny?
Yeah.
How do we make people feel like they're truly part of the conversation and the work? one way I would recommend, maybe if you have a robust board already that leans one way, bring in people in couples or triplets
Yeah.
that are of that new group, right? So that they're not on an island alone.
If we're community media people, and we're supposed to be representative of all viewpoints, are we living that on our board? I mean, I know that's a value that we hold, right? So, yeah.
I'm going to go here. Ethnicity and race, I feel like this is a really important slide. When we look at CEOs, 90% of them are Caucasian. And everybody else falls in. When we look at board chairs, much the same. Board membership, we already touched on. So we got some work to do as an industry, right? And it's up to us to be intentional and thoughtful and courageous, right? To tackle this and to have the conversations about it.
Can I just, since we're here and Mike's here
Mhm.
for 1 second, can you bring back that slide? I would love for the Alliance to do a survey and see where we sit in comparison to that chart.
In what, when you say that though, are you talking
In that
about?
chart.
Yeah, so like in different
Are you, I mean,
organizations.
are you talking about the composition of the national boards?
No,
or
I'm talking
composition of
about
boards across the country?
the composition of the
Sure.
CEOs and boards across the country. I think having served on the board several times, we've made an effort to be as diverse in all things, not, age as well. It'd be nice to see age within that. And maybe we need to do more work, but I won't know until I see. So I'm just gonna raise that because Mike's in the room.
Do you feel like you don't know?
I know.
feel
Right,
like
I'm
I
like,
know,
do
I know.
you feel like you don't know,
But
really?
I don't.
I feel like I don't know, but I'm sure as heck hoping that we're better than the last couple slides you just showed me.
I think that's fair.
So, and I feel like, in my being on that national board, I don't think that we do a very good job.
That we are.
I don't think, I mean, your gut instinct, Mike, and you say you know, how close are we to that?
I would say the foundation is an amazingly diverse board now. We have more people of color than non-people of color, that's a word, on the foundation board. As a trade association board, we represent factions within the industry that we have associations with, and there's some issues that our industry has.
Understand. So we only have like 4 minutes actually, so we've done really well. Is there anything that you want to?
Can I shout a few things at you really fast and then we'll take some questions? So why does board diversity matter? The reason that, some people kind of don't feel like it's a priority. So if you have to go back and fight this fight, or if you're in this room and you're one of those people, when you're homogenous, you have blind spots. When you have blind spots, you're not able to really carry out your mission work, not in the best and most efficient way. Sometimes you can even do harm to the people that you're there to serve. What gets in the way? Selection criteria. We've always kind of done it this way. It's who we know. Sometimes we're not looking at what diversity could truly mean. Sometimes we think, oh, it's only about money, when it could be so many other contributions that people give. And sometimes we just have systems of power and privilege in place that we've never checked or questioned. And maybe it's time to just, like she said, dismantle the whole thing and start again. What's going to take to change? Shared values and understanding. Adjust your recruitment philosophy and take action and hold yourselves accountable.
Can I just add to this real quick? ALF has been convening a group of nonprofit CEOs, 2 cohorts. It's about 20 executive directors in the Bay Area around diversity and inclusion. Transformational. I mean, all of us have learned so much from this that we're going to be publishing kind of the learnings from these groups. We're talking about like white executive directors who have the diversity and inclusion conversation on their boards to the point where a couple board members left. I mean, they've come up with cultural humility documents for how they show up and how they deliver services. I mean, it's been such a great learning experience. And Mike, maybe I'm happy to share that with you, happy to share it with folks that are interested in that deep work. It's been really difficult and amazing. But we have to have this conversation or the numbers aren't going to change.
Absolutely. A couple of years ago, CN, if you looked at our board, it was all those things that we just clicked through. And they, over the last 2.5 years, have made an effort to change the culture. And when you look at our board, there are different communities, genders, ages, industries represented in a way that never was before. And so, I mean, we're out preaching the gospel and still have work
Sure, the idea of calendaring content areas for future board agendas or committee meetings, that they have an expectation and hold themselves accountable for, oh yeah, gotta put this up there, gotta learn it, talk about it.
That's great.
It was good to know that I'm not much worse than the rest of them.
I think for me it's that you don't necessarily have to do things the same way. I hadn't even thought about this before because we always have such a hard time with the committees and getting committees together. But I think that if we start opening it up and saying that you don't have to be a board member to be on that committee, and we start recruiting people that way, I think that'll really help us out a lot. Because then you get more people in the pot, and it's going to be a lot better.
And I'm hoping you here talk to your board president and.
Yeah, I need to just make them be really accountable, because when that all happened and I was, reamed and she's just screaming at me, he goes, well, that's your job. And I go, no, Tom, there are like employment laws in place and I'm an employee and she can't come in and just steamroll people. They have rights,
Well, that's one of the rules that we have.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have one of the rules is that board members do not talk to staff individually. They go through the ED only, and the only time those things are brought up, so they can't come in and go to the technical guy and go, hey, you know what you need to do and what you should do and what I got an idea. No, and the staff knows it too. If anybody from the board does talk to them, they're supposed to go, you need to talk to Brian.
Right. Well, the one individual.
Well, the gentleman back had something. And
So I wasn't here for the whole thing, but the conversation of the last half hour seemed like it was summing it up. You validated for me that we're on the right path. So I'm that guy also who comes from a world where redoing your bylaws every 3 years was something we set in place almost 10 years ago, and 5 years ago we changed the bylaws, or 6 years ago, to allow email voting for board members who just couldn't make it to enough meetings, but added a lot of value and then a vehicle for them to communicate back and forth with the board. I think the biggest challenge that we've had is building diversity. In my own I lead a small nonprofit where I'm the old white guy and the only white guy in the organization, but I am the executive director as well. So, and my replacement, who is an Asian guy whose family was in an internment camp at one point, has a different point of view, will be taking my place here in the next 4 years. So then there'll be no white people in my organization, I imagine. Not that it matters, because it's the community that we serve is poor, and that poverty kind of unites many of those folks in ways that most of us who haven't experienced that kind of poverty would never understand. But I think that it's really difficult to recruit in a community where you don't have a lot of diversity in the first place. So that makes it difficult. And then also in that community, a lot of those folks come from very difficult situations where they don't have time to participate in these kinds of things. So trying to find people, I've advocated for and locked out on the idea that we should somehow pay people, reimburse them for their time for coming to board meetings. If that helps them get there, if we need to supply things like childcare, it doesn't all need to be old people on the board, right? I mean, we should be encouraging our younger people who have families, who this media is actually something that they can embrace, but we need to be able to support that participation, again, in these new ways. In my own organization, we already do that for community meetings that we have. We feed people and provide childcare and interpreters, but I think I've noticed in the 10 years I've been on this board, you mentioned longevity, it won't let me go because I'm the guy who redoes the bylaws all the time. But
Succession plan.
yeah, no, this is it. This is probably the last one.
So we have one more.
Thank you.
One more, and then we can wrap.
So I want to thank you all for coming and speaking today. This has been valuable for me. Suzanne, I just want to also say that I've missed your voice at these conferences. So it's been a thrill to have you back. My one thing that didn't get brought up, that this is my big thing, is I always feed my board.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I always feed my board whenever they're meeting, and in our case, noon works, and even if people work, they come, we meet about 5 times a year. They come and they get lunch, and it just works for us, because they're, it's a small town, they're not traveling far for work. But we always, respect the fact that they're giving up their lunch for us,
What
and
keeps
they,
volunteers coming back?
pizza,
Chips and
pizza.
Well, I want